Okay, here's a move that stopped me cold. A small team is building regulated finance on a blockchain out of Tbilisi in the Republic of Georgia. And when they needed someone to run legal and compliance, they didn't grab a growth guy or a hype guy. They hired the person who used to run crypto company registration at the country's central bank, the actual regulator. Most crypto projects treat regulators like the weather, something that just happens to you. This one put the regulator on the payroll. The company's called VS1, and the idea is almost stubbornly ambitious. They want to take the XRP Ledger, the thing most people know as a fast, cheap payment rail, and turn it into a place where real bonds get issued, distributed, and financed. Institutional capital markets, on-chain. And here's the tension that makes this a story. A piece of the plumbing they need? It isn't even switched on yet. So let's get into what they're building, who these people are, and the one number you can watch to know if it's real. Let's start with the people, because they're honestly the most convincing part of the pitch. VS1 launched last October out of Tbilisi, and the co-founder and CEO, Tbilisi, is a serial Web3 founder who runs a digital finance conference over there called DGFI. But the part that makes you lean in is who he built around him. His chief financial officer, Nicolas Beradze, isn't a crypto native at all. His background is straight capital markets. Scotiabank, Nomura, Schroders, Bank of Georgia. That's a bond desk resume, not a token resume. And his chief legal officer, Nicolas Kandelaki, used to be head of crypto company registration at the National Bank of Georgia. So when VS1 says regulated, it's not a sticker. They hired the guy who enforced the rule book. And here's what people miss. VS1 isn't crowding into the same lane as everyone else. The big tokenization story so far has been a US and Europe one. BlackRock, Franklin Templeton. VS1 is pointing the other way, at emerging markets, the former Soviet region, the Caucasus, Central Asia, where, as they put it, tokenization is the most useful, but the infrastructure just doesn't exist yet. Their stated pipeline is over $100 million in corporate bonds, green bonds, and private credit, and they're backed by 500 Global, the Silicon Valley fund with billions under management. So how do you actually build a bond market on a blockchain? This is where VS1 makes a choice that sounds boring, but is the whole point. On most chains, if you want lending or compliance, you write a smart contract, a little program you deploy onto the network. Trouble is, smart contracts are exactly what keep getting hacked. A huge chunk of the money stolen in DeFi comes from bugs in that code. So VS1's answer is, don't use them. Instead, they build on features baked directly into the XRP ledger itself. The difference between a third-party app you install and something built into the phone by the people who made it. Far less that can go wrong. So let me walk you through how the pieces fit together, because it's actually kind of elegant. It starts with something called credentials. Think of it as a tamper-proof stamp on your wallet that says, yeah, this person passed the identity checks. Then, permission domains build right on top of that, like a members-only room where only the wallets carrying the right stamp are even allowed through the door. And once you've got the right people in the room, the single asset vaults give them a shared pot to deposit into, and the lending protocol is the rule book sitting over all of it, the thing that actually turns that pot of money into real loans, with real terms and real repayment. And here's the detail I love because it tells you these are grown-ups. The actual credit decision, the underwriting, stays off-chain with human credit desks. The ledger doesn't pretend to be the loan officer, it just enforces the deal once the humans make it. The lender arranging the loan even posts first loss capital. They eat the first losses before anyone else. A classic Wall Street safety mechanism, written straight into the blockchain. All right, the AI part, because the second you see AI-powered DeFi hub, your eyes are supposed to glaze over. Everybody slaps AI on the box now. So I went in expecting a chatbot that just says nice things. And, okay, I'll be fair, it's more real than I expected. VS1 has a wallet-connected AI assistant, And in their own demo, it isn't just talking. It reads your actual on-chain portfolio, pulls your balances, and when you ask for a trade in plain language, it builds the swap right there in the chat and lets you sign it. So it's a genuine read and do co-pilot, not just read and chat. And that's rarer than it sounds. There's even an education mode that just teaches you DeFi from scratch. Now, where I want to keep us honest, because trust is the whole game, is the gap between what's demonstrated and what's marketed. The copilot that reads your wallet and executes a swap is shown. It's real. The bigger claim, a fully autonomous manager that rebalances your money while you sleep, reads more like roadmap than something to lean on today. Same with the security badge. VS1 says it's built to align with SOC 2 standards, the bar institutions expect. And given the team, I believe they take it seriously. But aligned with a standard and holding the finished certificate are two different things. And I couldn't find a published report. So the fair read. Impressive foundation for a company this young, and some of the flashiest lines are still ahead of them. That's not a knock. It's just where they are. Okay, this is the part that turns VS1 from nice startup into, wait, this might matter. In 1 week, in late June, two things happened. First, VS1 joined Ripple's Accelerator, a program Ripple runs with UC Berkeley focused on bringing capital markets on-chain. And 4 days later, the XRP Ledger Foundation announced it's partnering with VS1 to build an open-source reference app for compliant lending. And sit on that word, open source. They're not building a walled product to trap customers. They're publishing the blueprint so any team, any bank, even a competitor can fork it and build their own. As VS1 put it, compliant lending is the bridge institutions need to move serious money onto XRP. For a venture-backed startup to open source its core, that's a real trust signal. But here's the piece that surprised me. Remember the Regulator? This isn't theoretical. VS1 is preparing to issue an actual tokenized corporate bond inside the National Bank of Georgia's regulatory sandbox. The central bank opened that sandbox for tokenized bonds back in April, targeting its first issuance later this year. And to be precise, the central bank hasn't chosen or endorsed VS1. It just opened a door VS1 walked through. But think about the feedback loop. Everything they learn under a live central bank gets poured back into that open source blueprint everyone else can use. And it's getting noticed. Masari, one of crypto's most respected research shops, named VS1 in its State of XRP report, in a quarter when real-world assets on the ledger jumped over 100% to around $2 billion. So, okay, if the team's this strong, and a central bank sandbox is in play, and Ripple's own foundation is on board, you're probably waiting for me to say, but. And you're right to. There's always a catch, and no honest video skips this one. Two of the four building blocks VS1 needs, the single asset vaults and the lending protocol, aren't live on the XRP ledger yet. On this network, new features get voted in by the validators, the independent computers that run the ledger, and a feature only activates when more than 80% approve it and hold that for 2 straight weeks. Right now, those two lending features are sitting at about a quarter of the vote. That's a long way from 80. But here's the nuance that separates a real look from a hit piece. That low number isn't a rejection, it's caution. A Ripple engineer put it perfectly. Safety comes first. The validators are deliberately waiting on a batch of bug fixes before they flip the switch. And in the meantime, the lending code already passed a clean outside security audit. No critical issues. So the rails aren't broken. They're being torqued down carefully before takeoff. And here's the encouraging half people forget. The other two pieces, the credentials and the permission domains, are already live on the main network. Half the stack is done. The two credit pieces are the ones still in line. So where does that leave us? VS1 is one of the clearest bets on a real idea, that the next wave of tokenization won't be another Wall Street clone. It'll come from a compliance-first team, in an underserved market, on rails that are safer precisely because they're boring. The people are real, the regulator is real, the open source commitment is real. What's not finished is the vote. So here's how I'd leave it, and something you can actually do. No hype, no price talk. If you want to know whether institutional lending on the XRP Ledger is becoming real, you don't have to trust me. You can watch it yourself. Go to the XRP Ledger's amendments page. It's public. And look up the lending protocol and the single asset vault. If those numbers climb from the low 20s toward 80% and hold, the rails are going live. That's your clearest signal. Second, that open source reference app is meant to be read and forked, so you can study how compliant on-chain lending is actually designed. And third, watch for that first tokenized bond in the Georgia sandbox later this year, the moment the theory meets an actual central bank. None of that is a recommendation to buy anything. It's a way to follow a genuinely interesting experiment with your own eyes. If you got something out of this, subscribe. I do one of these deep dives on a real project every week. No shilling, just the homework. Drop a comment with what you want me to pull apart next, and I'll see you in the next one.